Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Reimagining AI series. It's a series of conversations with thought leaders, artists, academics, people who have a different alternative take on AI and maybe even a subversive take on AI. Today we're speaking to Kombo Chapfika, who's moving. Kombo is a multidisciplinary artist based in Harare in Zimbabwe. He uses tech and different type medias of tech in his practice, and he's also critiqued AI and its impact on creatives. So we're talking all about that. Hi, Kombo, again. um, so let's just start. Like, what would you say your practice explores in relation to culture and technology?
Okay. Well, overall, I'd say like my work is about social commentary and current affairs. I think the best way to understand it is sort of like to get some background. Like, I'm a lifelong artist. I studied economics. Throughout uni, I was like doing art, freelance. Once I graduated, I just worked in initially like web design, then animation, and in that time, I was doing like fine art, drawing, painting, all the rest. So it's all kind of like it's all a million to me, like different media, and I've always thought of like technology as like a tool. My first interest in like graphic design was maybe when I was like 17. I had a cousin that was using Corel Draw, so I jumped in with that just to learn it, and then obviously later Photoshop and things like that. And fortunately, at this time, like things were on the internet, you could go online and learn stuff. So it made it possible to figure out ways to do things and just do it for yourself.
Mm.
Technology specifically in the work, I call it, I use a lot of like repetition, right? Because there's a media commentary is part of what I do, and you can't separate that from technology right now.
Yeah.
So I use like some tropes of like propaganda, mainly like repetition. Like I keep repeating like this phrase like primate change, which is just like a commentary overall on like our techno cultural like mutations that's going on. So that's intertwined with technology because that's how we communicate, that's how we travel. Us having this conversation wouldn't be possible. It would be possible, but in the past it would be like padare or something, and it might be
Mm.
like just a bunch of guys and gendered. We'd know who's there, whereas the internet changes like what you can do completely. So I just put that all together in this little like sort of key phrase of like primate change, because that way I can also use that trope of like the repetition,
Mm.
have like that key, that trigger thing. So I'm I'm a technophile. I use technology, but I think you can still critique it
Mm.
even though you use it. Like anything, there's like a happy medium, or in some ways, I think because I use it, I might have enough of an understanding of like what changes. Like my first cell phone, I think might have been like 18, and it was just a leash. It was probably like a little Nokia brick phone. It felt like just a leash for my parents to track me.
Yeah.
So if you compare that now with kids getting like their first Sally mid-teens or something, and they're loving it and they just want to be grabbing or they're taking pictures, it's a whole different perspective. So I've been able to kind of go from that where it's something new, something outside that's new that's coming into the space, so I can kind of see the differences that happen because of that kind of being outside it. Whereas I think if you just grow up in it, you're
Mm.
not gonna notice something because it's just normal, you know.
Yeah. 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 That's really interesting. And that primate. Sorry, I didn't know exactly specifically how you phrase it, but that's also really interesting because,
I love it.
yeah, just like even though tech is so well, it's like technological. There is something about our like just visceral way of using it and engaging with it, and even how information like is passed on. Like I love your series of those sort of newspaper headline posters.
Mhm.
And when you said that primate thing, it made me think of like mimesis. And when you mentioned also repetition, like mimesis and how even that term of memes, which comes from like memetics, how information is passed on, how things get viral, how ideas like are passed
Mm-hmm.
on through tech as well. It's quite fascinating. Um, so how do you approach tech in your practice? Like maybe some types of tech that you're using. I know you're at the Venice, you're one of the artists at the Venice Biennale this year. Congratulations. There's some tech aspect to that work. Yeah, how do you approach tech in your work and also AI in your work?
Okay. I'll go in reverse order. So, like starting with AI, when I guess the online talk became very prevalent and the things you could actually download and try out, this was probably when Stable Diffusion came out. I jumped into it. I took a look. It seemed like it was. I thought it was going to get banned, to be honest. When I first like was reading about it and researching, I was like, "There's no way this is gonna like this is probably gonna get banned." So I downloaded Stable Diffusion with all these models and all this other stuff. I think it's insanely difficult. I had a friend of mine who's like way more hardware and software and knows like Python help me out.
Mm,
He's helped me out in the future, in the past with like some other projects. Helped me with the installation. I just gotten a new like HP Omen gaming laptop that could handle it.
mm,
It's like 40 gigs, yeah? It's massive. So I think so. This was maybe 2 years, 2.5 years ago, and I think in total I've generated maybe like 2,000 images, just experimenting, just to see. I'll put them in one folder so I can just see how many there are. Sometimes
mm,
I think I've actually shared like two, and these were in a show here in Harare at the start of the year, and they were titled "All That Glitters Isn't Gold," and there were two images, very similar, but one was like a man and one was a woman.
mm,
It's like this black Zim guy, good looking, good health, standing on top of all these gaudy, like broken cars in a car, like a wrecking yard. And I gave it like an augmented reality sort of like image recognition filter, which I animated in After Effects. So when you hold up your phone, it catches the image, tracks it, and then it plays back this animation of like the cars burning and like, some
mm,
birds floating around in the background. So I gave it that title for a reason, because at the time I kept on having this sort of recurring experience with AI
mm.
where like I'd see something I liked online and then I'd find out it's AI and I'd be like, you know, I prefer when the experience is better if it's like the first sensation is it's AI and then you can just enjoy it because that's how I find for me personally. If it's like disclosed immediately and then like I enjoy it, it's kind of like it's just much better. But if I see something first, don't think it's AI, and then find out it's AI, I'm disappointed.
S-
So
And why is
commenting
that?
on
If I can just cut into that quickly, because that's quite interesting.
because sometimes like because I'm a maker. I don't know. I think there's a few things going on, but one thing is I'm a maker myself. So when I see things, I kind of imagine how it's made,
Mm,
especially like cool animated stuff. Like I imagine how it's made, and it's just like, oh, that's cool. They pulled this off, and then you see it's like, nah. It's kind of like it was like a prompt with good styles and stuff. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. It's different. It's different.
mm, mm,
But also, it's kind of part of what I actually like in artwork is it kind of happens subconsciously. Is this like imagining the artist like process of making it. It's obvious with like really painterly brushwork, but even like found object sculpture or any work that's like at scale, you look at it and you're like, that took so much labor, so much time and dedication, or this one looks like the artist was really feeling this. You can kind of feel the sense of gesture.
mm,
There's that there's that embodied expression that's coming through, and it's still in some way like it still comes through in like digital art, but it's got that like filter of like the machine. But knowing the process of production, if I see something that's like, wow, that looks like it took a lot of work, it's just something that we kind of I think it's like a human thing. We just kind of it's awesome. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Like we
yeah, yeah.
see it and it's like this awesome thing. So that's something that I kind of like in art
Yeah.
actually. doesn't all have to be. I like gesso or like very minimal stuff as well, but I definitely like that too. So
And sorry, you're bringing up some things that are like really interesting. But so in the two AI in the two works that you made where you used AI as part of the process, I saw one of them on Instagram actually. It's really beautiful. What was then the process of making that? Because you were
oh
talking
yeah.
about what you like about, well,
Hmm.
part of what you like about art is
Hmm.
considering the artistic process and what it took to make it. So what did it
Yeah.
take to make those pieces?
I think I worked on it for about a week, and initially, I think in total I had to generate about maybe 20 images until I got like the four that I really sort of liked, and then worked on them some more. It went from like pretty chaotic. I was in Stable Diffusion, like the local installation.
Mhm.
Went from fine tuning like the prompt. The prompt's maybe like 30 characters long, and some negative prompts on like bad hands, that sort of thing. And then once I started getting close, I started like fine tuning it. I did some like little sketches because you can give it like image inputs as well to kind of refine the composition. And then once I had, I think, about two, three images for each of the final two, I kind of composited those together in Photoshop, cut them into layers, and then took them into After Effects where I did like the animation, rendered that out as I think an image sequence, took it into Spark AR, which is how you make the Instagram filters. And that was the whole process. It was through about a week. They were kind of working on them simultaneously, like kind of together.
And that process versus, because you're a multimedia artist, that process versus something you do like painting, for example, or any other art work that you've made in another medium, how would you compare? And then do you see those two works or types of works differently?
It's a different experience. What surprised me was because there was supposed to be a bit of a critique, hence the title, right? All that glitters isn't gold. People loved them, so maybe I lived like the job was too good. I made it too glittery. I've never felt this weird, like odd, like you're supposed to be upset that people were actually like sparked, you know? So that surprised me. Well, as far as the process goes, obviously it's like different between like a tactile work using your hands, being able to iterating is always different. So it's not just with AI, but digital art, you get to like make versions and like refine it. Whereas if you're doing like the far side of the spectrum is like a performer or something. But within my own practice, it might be like a live painting, which is essentially a performance, but making like a visual art. You know, you don't get to iterate. You don't get to do over. You can like play with the errors, which is how a lot of good stuff actually happens. And like I think in painting, a lot of the good stuff is actually mistakes that you just kind of work with and it ends up being something cool. So getting to undo, I had this weird sensation once. I was painting in the studio. This happened maybe like 3 years back, and I made a little mistake. And in my mind, I thought Control Z. You know, you just like, and then I realized, crap, there isn't one. I gotta like, so it's different. There's just different ways of thinking, different ways of like actually kind of going about the process. Like I think when I'm using like physical materials, the process matters the most. Um, with the AI generated images and the AR, I kind of had a like a rough destination that I kind of like slightly adjusted on my way to it, you know. So yeah, there's some differences. I think that one really. I thought about doing this. Like it really deserves like a table or something where you kind of like, like this is the economics background now, where you've got like a column and you have like different like media and you have different like categories like tactile, you know, redos, iterating, and just kind of compare and maybe put them in some sort of like graphic representation because
Yeah.
there are subtle differences, but I think they're all related because I've been able to kind of like swim back and forth and take things from different parts, like vacuum tableting things into digital art using the drawing skills in there. But there's some subtle differences, and the people people that work in the different spaces are very different,
Mhm.
I gotta say, that I've met over the years.
Yeah, it's a lot of interesting things that you brought up there. Like I was watching this video by two British artists, Lex Fefega and Anna Ridler, in conversation, and they were also raising this question about someone saw, like, I don't know, Lex's a video piece. They both use AI in their work. They're both creative technologists. And then when that person was enjoying it, and then when they find out it was AI, they were like, "Oh, I don't like it anymore." So
Mm-hmm.
it's such an interesting
Yeah,
question.
that
But then
journey.
also, like, what you're saying, I think it's also interesting what you're saying, because there's something changing about maybe then how we value art, how we value the artistic process, like what do we value? Or maybe we're even
Mm-hmm.
having to question that now.
That's the question.
What makes art, and what do we actually value about
Yeah.
art? What do we value about the artistic process? And interesting
Mm-hmm.
that you were saying about my mind is going blank. But yeah, like those are just interesting questions that are going to be coming up, I think. And with digital art, is it is it the process that makes it, but that process is quite maybe hidden sometimes, or maybe it's AI, so that's looked at in a certain way. Or with digital art, is it then more the concept that makes it? So because it's not
Mm-hmm.
just going to be good because it's made on AI. You can also just have something that's like pretty
Yeah,
average, even
I've
though
got a
you've
lot of
got
that.
AI tools. You still have
Yeah,
to have a strong message or something captivating in your story,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So maybe with digital art, we start like thinking more about that. I don't know. Just some things that stood out to me from what you were saying. And
I agree. I agree. Like you
and
said
in
something there,
your
like that's like the crux of it. Like
sorry,
what do
just
we value?
mm, mm. Yeah, I attended like a lecture as part of a residency, and it was like a philosopher, a doctor of this woman. She's like an actual philosopher, and she was looking at the is AI art, but through a philosophical lens. And it actually really helped me to understand what philosophy is as a science, because the questions that she asked, like digging deep into that question, is AI art? Why would that an AI piece be considered an artwork or not, etc., etc. Yeah, there's so many questions that we and so many ways that we can evaluate that. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, in your bio, you sort of mentioned like the psychosocial and physical effects of AI, which
Up
I
technology.
find oh sorry, of technology, yes, of technology. And I just wanted to dig that into that a bit more as well. Like, what is your relationship with that? What does that even mean to you, actually?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I think I'll talk about it first with like an example. Like have you heard of phantom vibrations? You never heard of phantom vibrations? Okay, well, phantom vibrations is like when you think your phone like vibrated in your pocket, but it didn't. There was like no message. There was no notification. This is like a
Oh, I
like
don't
a
have it because
like a
I my phone is on silent and I have no vibration. I
yeah,
don't like any notification from my phone, so
yeah.
that's why I haven't had that.
But it's a thing. Even if you haven't
Yeah.
actually like had the sensation, it's like a thing that's now arisen because of our attachment to our portal to the absent world. You know, like through our phones, we now have like phantom vibrations. This, in a weird way, see parallels with that and like with like ghosts and spirits. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because we're so used to like having access to people in another space, we're more conscious of what's out there, even when we're
Mm.
here, and a little bit more absent. Like another example is like going to dinner with someone and they spend half their time on the phone, and you know it's like a bad interaction or something like that. You know, so it does. There's plenty of ways in which it's like it's changing our psychosocial like lives.
Mm.
I mean, there've been studies done about it. Um, all sorts of research. It's changed how people meet each other. People now meet
Mm.
on like dating apps. This is changing like the fundamentals of just like courtship and just general like community. The that word itself has now changed.
Mm,
Community used to be just the people within your physical space.
exactly.
Now weirdos of all sorts can find other weirdos in other places, and it's a community. So I mean, I could go on. It's so many ways. Like I've been able to travel and work with people that wouldn't even be possible like a generation ago. Things like that. My ability to even work with the technologies I'm using, or even to be even inspired by it. Like I got into tufting literally because I was like a bit bored of painting, and I started seeing like this weird stuff, mostly on Instagram. I was like, what is that? And literally like now 2.5 years later, it's like part of my practice, something that I love doing. I'm experimenting with. I'm actually trying to break the medium and do it wrong, because the way when I first saw it, I was seeing like the work side, not the front side, and I like that. So I'm like, well, that's what I like, so that's what I'm going to work with. That wouldn't be possible because I've literally never before I traveled, I never actually met anyone locally doing this stuff. I had to see it online. I mean, yeah, but that idea of like community, just ideas that are being passed around that can spread faster, virality, the speed, the scale of everything. Um, there's positives, you can like go online and like download PDFs for free. The main challenge that I see is that there's such speed and scale that you mostly have to say no. You mostly have to say no, and you have to like be very mindful about what you choose to actually like access and like put yourself into like checking out, because the quantity, the volume of it, like I've accepted that in my life I'm probably gonna like see like 0.001 of like the awesome media that's available out there. That's just the reality, and AI just takes that to another level because of the speed of production that's possible. Which then, like as a professional artist, you don't want like mass volumes of stuff. So like the whole idea of like value comes into play. I don't know. There's a lot there, but trying to stick with the psychosocial sort of thing. Mm, I don't know. I think I touched on like most of the things.
And it's quite interesting that some of the things that you touched on, and you kind of mentioned it, like the communities which are on social media, access to information, which is like portals like Google, now ChatGPT, are actually things that are powered by AI. And
Yeah.
then, as you mentioned, like the speed of things, and yeah, and it's only increasing. We're actually just working on like a little reel that we're going to post, and it is talking about like how the current speed of development in tech is things like how we live, society, etc. It's already changed so fast, but it's going to change even more in ways that we can't even imagine, probably.
Yeah, I see more and more people sort of like kind of deciding where they want to go with it. Like I've
Mm,
had friends from uni who have never been on, who have never had like public like Facebook or Instagram or
mm,
anything, and you have to contact them. I got a friend here who he'll do WhatsApp and that's it. I know some other people that are similar, but I feel most of them grew up without it. So there's that clear, outside perspective to it. But when you see how powerful it is, I think that's why it's so important that people actually have this discussion outside of the expert bubble of technologists as well, because the incentives are so different when you're inside it. Because for you, you want to like, if I'm inside this like bubble, whether I'm doing animation or I'm doing like digital art, you want to innovate, you want to like be fast, you want to, it's sort of like this hyper competitive. There's no rules because it's such a on the frontier sort of mindset. But when we see how powerful it is, I think the rest of society, or society as a whole, needs to really have more of a discussion about like what do we actually want this to do? What are the goals that we have for this stuff? Otherwise, you get like, what's that? There's a phrase that Zuckerberg said that just kind of encapsulates the idea. He said like, move fast, break things. I'm just like, oh,
mm,
you know what I mean? If you got a bunch of like VC capital funding your endeavors, it'll work. You can move fast, you can break
exactly.
things until you make something that's awesome. But the rest of society is not living in that same sort of
Mm,
ecosystem
yeah,
where they can afford to break things all over the place.
yeah,
People will lose their jobs,
yeah.
We can look at like the whole Uber driver situation and like next door in SA with like literal gang warfare with the taxi cabs and the Uber drivers. Um, yeah, there's lots of consequences that go beyond the actual source of these like technological innovations. So we need to kind of be mindful and kind of just keep talking about it. You don't have to be experts to have an opinion. Even like an ignorant
Exactly.
opinion can be helpful
Absolutely.
for the overall environment.
I actually don't believe in being an expert, especially now as things are changing so fast. Like, it's almost more important to be able to learn and iterate and,
Yeah.
and yeah, I agree fully with what you're saying. Like, part of the reason why we started this series is that it's so important that people understand these things and understand, like, well, let's say AI specifically, how it might impact them, also understand how it might help them and what dreams and hopes that they
Mhm.
could have for it. I actually think everybody should learn, like in school and stuff, everybody should learn a bit of coding, everybody should learn a bit of tech, because these are the tools that are shaping the world right now. As you just mentioned, like, when you talk about tech, it's almost like talking about capitalism, because it impacts everything, down to like the taxi wars that you were talking about, politics, etc., etc. We need to understand these things. And I also think that some of the narratives on technology, focusing on like the big tech companies, Google and all of that, it's a bit like it can be disempowering for people, because then AI sounds really scary. But I think it's also a way of disempowering people so that they don't get to be they don't get too involved, and those people maintain power, right? So we really have
There's
to,
that, yeah,
like,
there is that sense of
because
it.
they have that knowledge, and like this
Mhm.
1% have all this knowledge, and as you mentioned, the resources. But even if you don't have the resources, have the knowledge, because they are so powerful just because they're the ones that hold that knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, the story can go pretty far. We can talk. I try to take it from like going to talk to like A-level art students at Chizzy,
Mm,
all the way to like digital sovereignty on like a national level, because that's how far it
mm,
goes, really. You
mm,
know,
mm,
like when I went to like talk to the Chizzy Girls High School students A-level class, went to give them a talk about VR, a presentation, a workshop, and some of them were actually like despondent because of AI. And this was, I think this was 2 years ago. Like some of them were like, why should I even learn? Some were like, I should learn that, you know,
mm,
because they'd spent most of like these kids are like what, like 17, 18. They spend most of like their art learning in like drawing, painting, collage, a little bit of sculpture, that sort of thing. But I felt like anxiety and like fear was the main way that they felt about AI.
mm,
2 years
mm,
ago, they weren't really like using it like that. I mean, when it comes to a lot of this technological stuff, I remember like trying to get like my first good laptop that could actually run this stuff. So there are like
mm,
actual hurdles. Like you can use stuff online, but now it's like a service that it's a subscription. And I prefer to have control of like my tools to be able to just do it locally. And most of these innovations are being created by massive corporations that the ones that won the last round, as I would call it, you know, they won the last round of like technological innovation, and then they're like creating this new thing that accelerates things, but in a way that like, because my main issue with AI is the sourcing of the training data.
mhm, mhm,
And if you're going to start talking like capitalism and how like this could just accelerate and exacerbate wealth inequality, I think by its very structure, it will
mm,
do that by
mhm,
crowdsourcing all this training data without compensation or consent, and then concentrating it in like these massive companies where people around the world will pay like for Mid Journey, people pay like $10 a month
mhm,
to use the model, right? That, that's like people are using AI here in Zimbabwe. I've seen billboards on Newlands Road, on Enterprise Road. Now Emerson Dabudzo Mnangagwa Road. There's a AI generated billboard on that road. And you can tell I looked really closely and I saw it. I was just like, what? That's like AI generated. Like, so people are using it in graphic design mostly. I see actual like in the market, and then when it comes to like the high level of things, we do just as African people, we probably should be trying to make our own platforms
Mm-hmm.
as well. I don't think it's right to just be consuming, you know, products and services without actually have the capacity to actually run them yourself. I think it's really important
Exactly.
because people have different perspectives and values, and when things get spicy, that's when you really realize the difference and the
Exactly.
importance of actually having that. Because we have different stories that we want to highlight at different times, different priorities.
Mm,
Um, like you're more like a Zimbo kid with a cell phone is more likely to know like LeBron James right now than Kwame Nkrumah. You know what I mean? Because like we're downstream of the sources of these things, which is
absolutely.
mostly like U.S. media and tech companies. So that has an effect. So I think
Absolutely.
it's from like high school art students all the way to like that sort of thing.
Mm,
It's a big deal, and I think it's getting more important because we're becoming more reliant on these things for our work,
mm.
communication, just culture, everything.
Yeah, I agree. It's getting more and more important. And I know that like there is has been a lot of development in AI, but in some way it's still kind of burgeoning as well. Like there is still room to like shape things in new ways. Um, and as you said, we should be building our own platforms, we should be building things that
Mm-hmm.
mean something to us. And as I was saying previously, I'm not really into like needing to be an expert in something. I think that's where collaboration comes in. That's where learning new skills comes in. And that's, I think, the great thing with tech is that, as you mentioned, you can go
Yeah.
online and learn something,
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's something that's, you learn more while doing it. And that's why I love being like in tech and using tech. So,
That's what I enjoyed the most actually when I was like learning to use After Effects.
mm,
Like I get excited, just like reminiscent. That like feeling of like getting better at using this awesome tool that produces
yeah.
artwork that I really enjoy. Knowing that I used to suck at this and it's like getting better. Like I like that. Whether it's you know After Effects or trying to use some of these like interactive like apps as well.
Mm,
It's nice to learn
mm.
stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So, just as a last question as we round up, it's been such an interesting conversation, and I feel like there's even more that we could talk about. Maybe we might invite you back on as the series progresses. Yeah, what are you sort of like? What's coming up for you? Upcoming, like, what tech are you excited about, or what platforms, or yeah.
Mm, I'm most excited about mashing up the different media actually. Like trying to actually go all the way from like sort of like a hybrid media with like live performers, but
Mm,
with like a layer of subtle tech involving like tracking. So I want to do something with more like live performance, some dance, and then like some tracking. I've got two Connect sensors. Like this week, I'll be doing some projection mapping. I want to have like some pre-animated content as well as like an interactive layer using these two Connect sensors. So I'm excited to do that. And I think I'll be doing more projection mapping because I'm working with some people with a lot of gear here. And I've just kind of come out of more of like a hands-on studio, like 6 month session. So that work is almost finished. I'm kind of looking more towards the second half of the year, like focusing more on like the interactive digital public collab, use those connect sensors. I think the tools are going to kind of connect sensors and projectors and try to get some sort of a good inverter to do stuff like kind of on the run, moving around.
that sounds super cool. And yeah, as I said, maybe we'll like get you on again because I think there's always new things to talk about and sounds like you're doing like some really great stuff. So thank you so much, Kombo, for your
Thank
time. Thank you for
you, people.
sharing.
It's fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the chat. So yeah, take care. Thanks everyone for joining. Bye.